Lojo sampo pa gyu trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda pege drolor tsampe tseparache palden lame shabla solvade Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajrad Sumati Munishas Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Oma Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sanekar Uta Vardani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Chetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Sikso So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Oyon Sungi Nawa Tsedo So Tseche Nyingne Solwa Debe Tse Dejen Korlo Visu Lekshu Yila Sambe Deden Malupa Geme Lungi Drubra Chingi Lo Tsoni Sodan Dikten Shapet Dingi Namke Insu Lekshu Ne Lapchen Tsoni Yonsu Tsopadan Chirani Dun Chamra Chingil Janchu Parginin Tsen Tukun Tu New Peme Silru Lekshun Janchu Drube Gegen Kunshishi Tungen de la Drubra Chingelo Dagilo Na Chola Chopadan Chemi Samjurang Imba Shiwat Chedan Tumbe Dodon Malupa Bemel Hungi Drubra Chingil Dorna Tingne Tsera Tamchedan Techi Pardune Ka Tamchet Rese Kamne Lama Keleme Tukje Chingi Dala Siksu So Gongyab Drewe Nyamta Dachal Jetsun Lame Tuje Rab Gongne Kudan Sungi Nawa Drame To Nyam Sunyong Kesan Tobra Kewa Kunto Yanda Lama Dan Drame Chuki Pela Lonchuch Sadan Lamge Yenter Dorje Changi Koba Nyuruto Sho Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tugdan Dagi Teyerme Chikto Chingi Alo Makyuke Kudan Dagi Lu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Makyuke Tugdan Dagi Teyerme Chikto Chingi Alo Sashi Pöge Chushi Meto Tran Rirab Lingshi Nide Gembadi Sange Shindu Mikde Ulwargi Drugu Namda Shingla Che Parasho Yidam Guru Ratna Mindrala Kam Niryata Yami Sange Chedan Tsogi Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kepsu Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonamki Drola Pinchira Sange Drupara Sho Sange Chedan Sogi Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sange Chedan Sogi Chonamla Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Drola Pinchira Sange Drupara Sho
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Namo Alhaye Keda Ludan Jinken Rubundan Mi Kenam Dan Ruakunge Dranam Chitsampa Tamche Ketu Dagi Chuten. Buongiorno.
Good morning. Before looking at the points that we are going to look at today, here's a brief reflection. Yesterday we looked at the fact that one of the first things that we need to do when facing our own mortality, to prepare for death, our own death, is to develop the awareness, non-conceptual and deep awareness of the certainty of death and the uncertainty of the moment of death. And something regarding our difficulty to realize this is the fact that we project an image of the future, this immediate future. We have this idea of how things should go, how things should be. And we expect things to be like that. And what's interesting is that constantly we are reminded, we are constantly reminded that it's not true, that things that we plan. For example, this morning I woke up early. I did everything I needed to do. I had breakfast, and I was all planned on arriving early, and then something happened, and I ended up arriving late. And I had to run to get here, and because I had to hurry up. Arriving late instead of early. So why did I have to run feeling hurried, I mean, even for those of you who are waiting, when we have an appointment, for example, there's some kind of anxiety that grows, that something's right, something is late. We project, we expect things to go in a certain way. And when reality corresponds to what we had planned, then we have a feeling that everything's fine, that we're in control. Instead, when things don't correspond, there's something wrong. And often we live it with anxiety, we live it badly. When actually, it's happened many times. I've had to wait. Then I find time to be silent, to reflect on things. I mean, there's so many positives that can come out of these kinds of moments where we have to wait, maybe even in traffic. But we should see that we have this natural tendency to project the future and expect things to go as planned. And we expect that now we're not going to die. It's not part of my plan. I should live at least as old as my grandfather, who's now he's 100. I come from a very a family that lives very long, and I'm only 42, so at least another 40, 50 years. I'm not asking too much. So one plans, and what happens is, on one side, it's necessary to plan because it's based on the planning, on the imagining the future, that we can walk in one direction or another. If I didn't have the plan of coming here today, I wouldn't have taken the road to take me here. to get me here. At the same time, as it's important to program, to have an objective, to walk towards that plan, that objective, but it's also important to be flexible so that we can sail according to the currents and the winds, and not be grasped and not grasp at what we had planned. We see, okay, I had planned this, but the wind is blowing in the other direction. So how can I use it to my benefit? We need to look at this. And I remember a book that I read some time ago. It was a Greek philosopher, and this a Stoic philosopher, and he would say, given that one wants to follow one's own plans, one needs to understand well one's own plan. If one states that one's main objective is to cultivate awareness, stability, I have this inner program that is the highest priority. What happens outside is secondary. So I need to get somewhere for an important meeting, and I'm not able to get there because there's traffic. But my main objective is to maintain my patience, and not to get to the meeting on time, and then maybe I missed the meeting. I need to wait another year. That's another point. But there's a higher objective, and I respect that plan. And I managed well, maintaining my patience. Even the question, I don't know when I'm going to die, as we talked about yesterday, this difficulty of really accepting the uncertainty of the certainty of our death. It's because we live in this world where we think our reality needs to correspond to our expectations, and this projection, this sense that things need to correspond to what we plan, that this gives us a certain security, because when we start seeing that things don't match what we plan, that can create a deep sense of insecurity. To be able to live with awareness, with clarity and certainty of the future, because our future is uncertain, in the sense none of us has the ability to foresee everything that's going to happen in the future, how things are going to be, etc. I've never seen anyone with this ability. I've seen people with great intuition. One can understand. Those who can forecast the future are a little bit like those who give a weather forecast. But then at a certain point, there are variables that one hasn't taken into consideration, and the sun pops out instead of the rain. But what happens is, not having the certainty of the future, I learned, at least, to relax in the certainty of the uncertainty of the future. Because once it's certain that the future is uncertain, I can relax. There's nothing to stress about. At the same time, I need to set an objective. I need a direction. But how can we have a direction and at the same time relax in this certainty of the uncertainty of the future? The only way that I've found is to find this security, this uncertainty, in not how things should go, but in my own resources to be able to face them. So I don't look for my stability and my security, my certainty in what has to happen, what should happen, but in my own resources that can face anything that comes. If I set out on a trip in a sailboat, I can't be sure that there won't be storms, that the winds and the currents won't um, won't change. I can find my security in the resources that I have. I have a good boat. I know how to sail, etc. So come what may, sun or storm or wind, I can face it. So something that's really important to do, even when faced with our own death, because we don't know when we're going to die. We know we are going to die. We don't know when, and we don't know how we're going to die. Because I've seen many people, you know, plan their own death, but very few were able to actually realize such a death. I remember someone, for example, every time I went to meet this very old lady, I would do, I would do, I would, I would recite prayers, a short prayer, a short puja, and I would say, I'm praying for your long life, and she'd say, long life, long life. No, my my bags are packed. I'm ready to go. I mean, she's fine. I mean, but the years go and the years go on and on and on. Um, eh, but but this is a little bit what I said yesterday. Those who say, death, let it come, that it pushes it away. They live long. They live long. But the point here is to focus on our resources. I don't see another way to imagine our future with serenity, other than focusing on our own resources in front of the many possibilities of what can happen. So we nourish the resources that we have. If I realize that I'm on a road, and I don't have the resources, then I need to work on that and realize that we don't have control of what happens. Obviously, if I see, I'll give you a very banal example, that the cost of energy is going up, and I'm using a lot, and I'm not earning a lot. I need to either earn more money or use less energy. So I need to organize the present within this plan for the future. I mean, this we need to do. But what's important is to not live in that expectation that things should go as we imagine them. If we try instead, if we it's very, very difficult to find a security by doing something like that. We all know that we're going to die. We don't know when, and we don't know how. And sometimes we think that preparing for death has to do with organizing the moment of death. Where will I be? How will it be? With whom will I be? No. We can try to organize everything, and then the moment has nothing to do with what we had imagined. So let's get to today's point. There are two things that I would like to look at. One, there's two methods that have to do with preparing ourselves for death starting now, and how to prepare when death is at our door, and then a brief explanation of bardo and rebirth. But since we started with the death this morning. We will continue with that, and in the afternoon we will look at bardo and rebirth, which is of lesser importance. As we saw yesterday, something that is fundamental at the moment of death is to be in a state of of of, of a positive mind, because at death the coarse mind dissolves together with the elements. So earth into water, water into fire, fire into wind, wind into consciousness. And the direction that the subtle mind takes follows the last thought of the coarse mind. As we saw yesterday, during the dissolution of elements, as the coarse mind shuts down, there's no time to think or to feel. I mean, so that last thought determines that the flow, and the subtle mind, as it shuts down, the direction that and that the direction that the subtle mind is in is the direction that the very subtle mind will follow. So at that point, that reinforces an imprint on a very important level, because when when we reinforce a mental state on a gross level, then we need a lot of time for that imprint to make a difference. The example I gave yesterday, we have many layers. We have the essence, the very subtle mind, and then we have the subtle mind, and then we have the gross mind. So let's imagine soil. If I want to water that bottom layer, then I need to, at the very top, I need to put water a lot, give a lot of water, get a lot of water, and then little by little that water absorbs until it gets to the essence, the very subtle mind. But what gets to the very subtle mind is not everything that's given. The alternative is to make a well, to dig a well that goes to the deepest layer and pour water directly there. And if I pour poison, it's a disaster, because it goes directly to the essence. Instead, if I put something positive and healthy, wonderful, at the time of death, actually, it's not really a well that we're going to do, but we're going to use meditation techniques. But what happens? The higher layers dissolve, and what is on the higher layers, they melt and they dissolve into the essence, the very subtle mind. So what you put on the top layer is going to influence the lower layers. So if I die with a mind of anger, I'm creating a deep imprint of anger within, and I create an unfavorable condition for my future next birth, because that feeling of anger becomes a condition at the time of death to actually awaken one imprint or another that then ripens and manifests in the bardo. We'll explain that later. So the inner state in which we die is the most important thing at the time of death. It's worth much more important than the prayer that you recite, the position you're in. The most important thing is to have a state of consciousness, possibly virtuous, harmonious, feelings of love, peace, harmony. Often we use the term having this state of deep unconditional love, with a deep feeling of joy that realize non-conceptually reality of everything. This is the union of new bliss and emptiness. But of course, if I to have this mind at the time of death, we need to train often in our life. So the same logic follows. I can die with a feeling of love and gratitude, of harmony, peace, many positive feelings that we can all generate at the time of death. So one thing that's extremely important at the time of death is to learn right away on how to induce an inner state, an inner positive state of mind, independently of what's going on outside. Because at the time of death is not the right time to start a new, to start something new. We what comes out is what we're used to, what what we have, the habits that we have. The most direct method of many is that we need to connect our thought with something, with someone that brings us to a feeling, to a virtuous feeling, that links us to a virtuous feeling. Imagine, for example, someone for whom you have desire. If someone imagine someone for whom you have desire, imagine his speech, his image, his smell, whatever it is. What feeling does it generate within? Attraction, aversion, indifference? Attraction, right? Even if you imagine pizza or a nice plate of pasta, it affects us, doesn't it? So it's important to have and familiarize ourselves with an object that when we connect with that object, we're connecting with a feeling of love and gratitude and peace. This is fundamental. And this happens in the practice of Guru Yoga. Won't give a complete explanation of the Guru Yoga practice, which would be very long, but let's go right to the essence. First of all, this starts from the assumption that the practitioner has a pure relationship with his own guru, and also the supposition that the guru is a reference of love, of trust, for whom I feel love and gratitude, that he generates these feelings. I've done this practice, for example, and I'll explain that in the second way, who have a strong faith in Jesus or Madonna. It doesn't have to be done with the Buddha or with one's Buddhist guru. We take our reference point of love and gratitude and peace. Once someone came to me and says, I'm doing what you explained, but I do it with my reference person is my grandmother. And that's wonderful. That's wonderful if she is the reference of those inner states of gratitude and love and peace and trust. We're generating a virtuous state of mind, and we're doing this through the dynamic of using the wisdom being, the commitment being, and the wisdom being. For example, here we have the photo of Trisha Rinpoche, we have the photo of Lama Ganchen, we have Lama Caroline here too, the images. When we see someone's photograph, we connect with that person, don't we? If it's someone for whom we have a strong feeling, attraction, aversion, resentment, or love, when we see that image, those feelings are evoked. Imagine someone who, someone for whom you have a tremendous aversion. You try to imagine that person. What feeling comes out inside? Aversion. So the point here is is to cultivate in our lifetime a relationship, an inner relationship and external relationship that one is able to maintain pure. It's a relationship of trust and of love and gratitude, faith. It's a healthy relationship that allows us to, that when we connect with that being, naturally we connect with what that relationship represents for us. That's clear, right? And it shows how important it is to cultivate a pure relationship. And I repeat, it doesn't have to be the relationship with the guru. It traditionally is done with the relationship with the guru, but one can imagine Tara, Buddha, um, uh, or or if you're Christian, with Jesus or with Madonna or even your grandmother, as I mentioned before. Why not? And if we, there's certain specific explanations of the benefits of one or the other, but this aside, let's start from the basis. It's useless to do this practice, visualizing something that doesn't evoke a sincere feeling. The objective is to induce that state of joy and bliss and gratitude, etc. So how does this come about? How does this practice work? So I'll explain it without the preliminaries. I'll just go right to the essence of the practice. We visualize in front of us what the so-called object of faith, our merit field. We visualize our guru or Buddha or Tara, he or she, that we have a profound connection with. And once we have this visualization in front of us, ideally we 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 unite the commitment being with the wisdom being, so that that being is actually present. And this comes because when we have an image of someone, naturally we connect with that person. It's not just an image. And our mind connects with what we think about. Communication goes beyond physical and verbal communication. It's not just a visualization. We imagine that the wisdom being, the actual being that we're visualizing, is present. And at that point, if we make it a little bit longer, we can do the 7 limb prayers. We make offerings. First, we make praise, and then offerings. We openly admit our mistakes, our errors, especially in relation to that relationship. We rejoice for the beautiful things and the positive things. We ask for him or her to stay with us. We want his guidance, his presence, his love, and then we dedicate what we've done. At that point, the essential part here, when we do Guru Yoga, we receive blessings, or we visualize light rays and nectar from the 5 chakras that come to our respective chakras. And then there's the most important part, and I want like to give emphasis today, which is called the absolute Guru Yoga. The the other part is called um, um, when we're asking for blessings and doing the seven limb practice. This is relative Guru Yoga. After we've done that, we develop a deep sense of wanting to get closer, to be inseparable. Imagine that we have someone in front of us and we have tremendous respect and love. Naturally, we have attraction. Once someone came to me and said, Lama, I had explained this relationship between master and disciple and the different aspects of it. And at a certain point, this boy came to me and he said, Lama, thank you that you explained this, because I tell you sincerely, if you weren't a man, I would say that I'm absolutely in love with you. I thought, I thought to make a little joke, well, you can fall in love with a man, why not? But this joke aside, the point is, I mean, how often was I in the presence of my masters, and I was just I had a stronger heartbeat, or I didn't know what to say. There's something just absolutely undescribable, and it's a strong attraction. And so in visualization, we imagine this strong attraction, this desire to be together, to get closer. And as we feel that, we imagine Guru Buddha comes closer to us. And when he comes closer, he becomes as big as small as a thumb and sits on our crown. And it's important that when Guru Buddha sits on our crown, our central channel, remember in the explanation of the central channel yesterday, it turns and goes to our forehead. In this case, the central channel opens up as if it were a kind of like like a trumpet. So it opens up, and Guru Buddha sits there, and his cushion covers the diameter of our central channel. And so our central channel and his become completely united, a direct connection. At that point, Guru Buddha descends, his cushion where he's seated sits and absorbs into our 8-petaled lotus flower at our heart. And our lotus flower has a moon and then a sun cushion that represents the indestructible drop that we explained yesterday, the female below and the male energy above. So this all happens within our central channel, and to be absolutely precise, the central part of the lotus flower it corresponds to the diameter of the central channel, as where the petals are the channels that go out of the central channel. At the heart of at the heart at the heart of the at the heart of our heart chakra. So we just imagine that Guru Buddha is seated at our crown. At our heart, there's a lotus flower at our heart chakra with a moon and a sun cushion, on top of which is the syllable hum, and like a light that vibrates with the sound of hum. It represents our very subtle and mind, this vibration, this sound vibration, its energy. So it's a seed syllable. It's a sound. It vibrates. It's full of energy. So Guru Buddha descends joyously. First his cushion and his lotus flower dissolves into ours, and then he dissolves on our lotus flower with the two cushions, and the syllable hum that at our heart, our very subtle body and mind melts with his, and our very subtle body and mind melts with Guru Buddha's, who sits at our heart. What's the most important thing now, while Guru Buddha sits at our heart, we allow ourselves to experience what it means to be Guru Buddha, that love, that gratitude, those qualities that we see of Guru Buddha, the quality of stability, of love, of wisdom, of peace and equanimity. We experience all of that. As I said before, if you do this with your grandmother, who's perhaps your reference of peace and love and patience, that's what we need to generate. We imagine in that moment to become inseparable and of the same nature of our object of faith, of our yidam. And when he sits or she sits at our heart, we have an expansion of consciousness. It's described as if, let's imagine some clay, and then there's the potter who is shaping the clay. The home at our heart, our very subtle mind and body, is the clay. And the mind of Guru Buddha that comes down and melts is the actual potter who shapes. So it's still us, but we transform. It's like being close to him. We are overwhelmed by these positive feelings, and we allow ourselves to rest our mind in this state of gratitude and peace and joy and love, etc. This is called absolute Guru Yoga. And if we want to use more specific terms, the state in which we rest our mind is absolute bodhicitta. It's that realizes the nature of every phenomenon. It depends on whether you have a certain familiarity with this or not. But the most important thing is, first of all, what does that being represent for me? Becoming inseparable, the same nature, and I develop within a deep sense of peace and joy, of stability, love. And the more I do this, the more I generate inner refuge. And this is something that I can generate anywhere at any time. For example, once I was on the plane going to Brazil, and normally I've never been afraid on the plane or had any kind of problem being on a plane. But that time there was a very strong turbulence, and at that point, at a certain point, it was very, very strong. I mean, the seatbelt was keeping me in, and just a short time before, there had been an accident with Air France on the same flight pattern, and I thought to myself, there is this possibility. And I thought, if the plane goes down now, what mind do I want to have? So I started doing the Absolute Guru Yoga because I wanted to generate the state of mind with which I will want to die. There wasn't much else to do. It's important for us to have a tool, to have an inner space, a place where we can go in difficult times, critical times. But to go there, it's like at a certain point I need to walk quickly towards a place, and I can do that in when it's foggy or when it's dark. I can do it well if I've done it many times. If if I've never been there and I need to hurry to get there, where I take my map and try to read the map, I have trouble. So it's really important for all of us in our daily lives to generate this inner refuge, to generate this inner space where we go to rest our minds, where we generate this state of peace and balance and joy. And the more we're able to do that, in the difficult moments of sickness or pre-death, etc., the the easier it is to go back to that place. Is that clear? This at the same time, when we imagine that Guru Buddha sits at our heart, we bring all of our attention towards our central channel and towards our heart chakra. So, getting into more detail, we have Buddha in front of us, comes towards our crown. When he starts to come down, we visualize the central channel, and our attention is only within the central channel. Take away our attention to everything around us. The more we do this, the more our senses turn off. And this is very useful if we're in a situation with external problems, pain or noise or problems. It's a wonderful tool to find an inner state of peace. So one concentrates solely on the central channel, and in this whole meditation, it's very important to consider the relativity of space, because when we imagine our central channel based on our body, it has it's small, like the thumb. It's where our spinal cord is. Instead, when we take away all the distractions of everything else, it becomes enormous. And if it's lived from within, at a certain point, it expands, and it's just enormous. And Guru Buddha comes and descends little by little. We imagine that we see from within. If we want to be precise, the ideal thing is that when we visualize the descending of Guru Buddha, who sits at our heart, our perspective is that we are at the center of our heart. We are the syllable hum. It's as if we're looking from below above and we're seeing Guru Buddha becoming inseparable with us. Our tendency is to visualize it as if it's happening outside, or I'm here outside, I'm imagining something happening inside me. No, ideally, one should bring one's own attention within the central channel, towards the heart chakra, towards the syllable hum. I am the very subtle body and mind. I am the syllable hum. This is how does this happen? By imagining the dissolution of the elements within the central channel. So little by little, we take away our senses, outside senses. All the winds absorb into the central channel. Our attention is all within the central channel. We bring our attention. We are at our heart chakra. We are the syllable hum. At that point, Guru Buddha comes and becomes one and inseparable with us. When that happens, we imagine that dot of light. It just expands. As that expansion can come in two different ways. Something either grows or it diminishes. I don't know if that's clear. there are two ways for something to expand and become bigger. Either the thing that I'm looking at is expanding, mhm, um, or I become smaller. It's a little bit like Alice in Wonderland. If I become small, the reality around me becomes bigger. Similarly, it's not that in this moment we imagine that the syllable whom becomes enormous, but we are the one who get inside. So we become minute, and that point becomes enormous, infinitely big. A short time ago, I read a book. It seems like I've read a lot of books, but I don't read that much. But I remember what I read. I read a book that talked about white holes. It's very strange. But what's interesting, I'm not the best person to explain this, and it's not the time to talk about white holes, but just in a few words, the white holes would be a reincarnation of a black hole, more or less. The black hole at a certain point dies and is reborn as a white hole. This is a theory. Black holes have been proven. White holes have not been proven just yes, just yet. But it's said that the black hole, the entrance, that let's say the mouth of the black hole, little by little, it gets smaller and smaller, and the inside part expands. So the tendency of a black hole is that the entrance becomes smaller and the inside becomes bigger. And so at the end of this process, the white hole would be something that has a microscopic entrance, but if you get inside, it has an infinitely enormous space with therein. It's like clear light. Imagine that dot of light. We go within, inside, and our heart chakra and everything absorbs, and once we get inside, there's this infinitely large space where even time stops. Even within a black hole, time stops. The the intensity of gravity is so strong that that time is even trapped somehow. So within this point that we call clear light, I'm just putting it into words like as I try to do this practice. One enters, Guru Buddha comes, sits down. First of all, we feel this feeling of love and joy. We become this state of peace and compassion and love. We become one with these feelings. This it's important to allow ourselves to live this state. We have to let go of this mind that says I'm jealous, I'm suffering being. No, we let go of this grasping at ordinary appearance, and we allow ourselves to be Guru Buddha effectively. And when we allow ourselves to that, we relax in that and we go in deeper. At a certain point, other there's nothing other than an infinite luminous void. It's as if we enter inside this indestructible drop where there's the very subtle body and mind. There's this enormous expansion of consciousness, of space, and we stay there for as much time as we need. So there are two parts in this practice that I explain, where we can connect with this feeling of love and peace and gratitude. And there's this expansion of consciousness where there's nothing other than a bright, luminous, enormous, infinite void. It would be the union of bliss and emptiness, the union of bliss and emptiness. of the clear light in union with the illusory body. So we imagine being this state of love and peace. The more we do this, the more we're able to familiarize ourselves with this, the more easily we have a place to connect. And if we don't have this feeling of infinite inner space and expansion, if we simply can feel that when Guru Buddha comes towards us, that we feel um, uh, taken care of, we feel loved, we feel hugged and embraced, and that embrace takes away all of our suffering, and we let ourselves go in that hug. That's already enough. That works. Okay. Are you following? Okay. This practice can be done with one's own guru, can be united with a specific meditational practice of one's yidam. It's important to do it though. It's interesting to see that in the various sadhanas, this part of absolute guru, which is the most important part of a sadhana, often it's done very quickly because there's nothing to recite. In the Guru Puja, for example, when do we do this meditation? After Kyoni Lama. When Kyoni Lama, in that moment of the practice of Kyoni Lama, Kyoni Yidam, it's as if one is looking towards someone that one is totally in love with, and one is saying, "I want to be with you." And when there's the next verse, that's the actual part where we visualize the Guru Buddha coming towards us, blesses our chakras, and then comes and sits on our crown into our heart. And that's the part in the sadhana when one should meditate for a long time. Of course, when we're practicing in a group, then there's those who are able and those who are not. But that's the moment where we really should put effort into going beyond our own identity. If we're able in our lifetime, if we're able to connect with an object of faith, one's own guru, a Buddha, if someone follows a different religion, can be Madonna, Jesus. What's important is that inner sensation of love and joy and peace and joy. This is what's important. And in the conclusion of this practice, one says one is in that state of bliss, in that infinite inner space, but then to be able to help other people, I need to get out of this abstract place, and I enter into a physical body, maintaining that inner link, that inner commitment hook with the Guru Buddha at our heart. But as we prepare for death, it's essential to have to be familiar and to be able to go to invoke this inner refuge. Great masters like Panchen Lotsen Chökyi Gyaltsen said that one should do this practice 6 times a day. That's very similar to the Islamic tradition. The prayers are done 5 times a day. I remember Lama Lawen. Many of you have knew him. I remember when I lived more in Milan, there were days where Lama Lawen would be reciting his text and he would watch TV. And there were Arabic texts that showed like they showed the prayers 5 times a day, the Islamic prayers, and he was fascinated by them, and he would say, if we Buddhists were able to have this constancy, it would be so wonderful for us if we were able really to have that constancy. Then we would be able to do a lot more. Tibetans are are very pragmatic for complex problems. For example, I need to leave tomorrow for a trip, but I need to I see that astrologically it's a bad day to leave. So what would we do if we didn't want to travel on astrological um, on a day that's astrologically unfavorable? We would change our itinerary. The Tibetans instead, they keep everything as it, but they 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 leave the day before. They sleep at their neighbor's house. So the trip actually started the day before. I left my house with my luggage, and then it's a very practical solution for a very complex problem. Similarly, they said one should do the Guru Yoga practice 6 times a day and night. Our habit, I mean, our tendency would be to break up the day in the 24 in the 24 hours. But the Tibetans instead, they do it 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening. It's 6 times a day. But the point is to familiarize ourselves with something profound. We need constancy. So we don't necessarily need to 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 do a very long, complex practice. There are times where one can do a longer meditation, but if one is able to find a short formula, in 3 minutes, 2 minutes, one is able to reconnect with that state. It's wonderful. For example, at the end of the Guru Puja, excuse me, at the end at the end of the Guru Puja, for example, Lama Ganshin added the extremely short Guru, the ex- the extremely short Guru Yoga, and the translation is. So, Lama Kunchun sun la Kyapsuchi Rani Larse Done Sunechu, Donachu sun Nechu Tadadum, Gechu Kundu Ji Shin Donje. So the translation is I take refuge in the Guru and the three jewels, visualizing myself as Vajrasattva, a pure being, with Dorje and Bell. I uphold the Dharma and the Sutra and the Tantra. I avoid negative actions. I apply the virtuous Dharma actions, and I benefit all beings with the practice of the four generosities. If we're able to divide up our day, where we simply can connect with Guru Buddha, who absorbs into our heart, we become inseparable, and then we dedicate that we want to be of benefit to all beings, and we act accordingly. If we're able to give a certain constancy to this, that has an enormous power. Of course, if we do it every once in a while when we get scared of dying, then it's clear that it's not going to work as well. One way to do this is using this verse. Another way is doing the mantra of one's own guru, where we just like Locho Sampo Pakyuta Shipa, we visualize our guru in front of us, and we receive by reciting his reciting his prayer. We imagine him blessing us, and then we do Pakyukeku Dagilu, Makyukeku Dagilu. The light rays come, they bless us. Guru Buddha comes to our crown and then develops to our heart. And so with this formula too, you can do it in many different forms. I mean, I do this before every teachings when we recite those prayers. So it's something that we need to integrate into our lives if we really want to prepare ourselves well. And I give you two examples of how this is possible beyond the great practitioners. I always give the example of a friend of ours, who's already passed away. So I say her name is Patricia Beninka, and we dedicate to her. At a certain point, she had gone to find a friend in Dubai, and she was there, and then she had some health problems, and during the night she didn't feel well. Then she started vomiting blood. She ended up in the emergency room. They gave her like a 40% chance of survival, and she ended up she was in a semi-coma for 10 days. She tells a story that when she woke up after these 10 days, that she had had a very positive experience, that as she was in the coma, I mean, beyond the fear of getting to the hospital and throwing up blood, she connected with Lama Michel Rinpoche, her guru, and she said that during these 10 days, her inner experience was just singing the guru's mantra, and she felt, and she was even saying, "Oh, but I'm in a country of a different religion. I need to be a little bit quiet as I sing this Buddhist mantra." But the point is, she was in total peace, a state of great bliss. She was in a state of dissolution where the contact with the outside didn't exist, but she was able to connect in that moment to a very virtuous state of being her own guru, and she stayed in that with that mind. Another person, she's still alive, so I'm not going to say her name. She had a car accident, and the car flipped many times. She lost consciousness, and when the paramedics arrived and they woke her up, she had fainted, and once they woke her up, she had a huge smile printed on her face, and they asked her how she was, and she said, "I've never been better," because inside she had this feeling of a very long time where she was reciting the refuge prayer, and she felt completely surrounded by love and security and peace. These are two examples. The people that are close to us, that in moments of crisis and difficulty, they were able to go to that inner space of refuge, and by connecting with it, they were very happy. And this is what we need to do during our death. If we're able to do that, it's an insurance. But to be able to reach that, we need to start right away to find that inner space and continue to practicing it and become familiar with it. So this is how to practice for death before actual moment of death. When someone is in a terminal state, when someone is where the body is letting go, and there's no hope of the body getting better, then this practice should be done a little bit differently. How? what I'm going to explain now. Once Lama Ganchen explained it to me, I was here in the Gompa, and as we were restructuring the temple, it was a very rare moment. I was just walking alone with Rinpoche, and I don't remember exactly why or how, but in that moment, we were actually near the statue of Buddha Amitabha, and Rinpoche explained to me how to do the practice of Poa. Poa, literally, um, it's translated as transverse of consciousness. In that moment, Rinpoche said there are many different techniques, different meditations, but there's the essence, which is the most important part. And it's what I'm going to explain now. It's very similar to what we've explained so far. And what changes is the following. We visualize Guru Buddha, who comes, who sits on our crown. It's very important to imagine that our central channel is one with our central channel. So his spinal cord, his central channel, becomes one with our central channel, like one thing. So first we visualize Guru Buddha in front of us, we make offerings, etc. We ask him to come, he sits at our crown. We find ourselves at our own heart within the central channel. All the winds absorb, everything that happens around us stops. The earth dissolves into water. We lose external contact. Water dissolves into fire. We lose our hearing, etc. All the elements dissolve, and that whole world around us dissolves in us. In other words, we imagine that our senses stop, shut down, and our awareness stays within our central channel at our heart channel. We are that point of light in the indestructible drop, the syllable hum. So everything around us shuts down. We imagine that we're in the center of the central channel that is very wide and big, and from within we can look up and we see that our central channel, it enters, it becomes one with Guru Buddha's, and we see the central channel of Guru Buddha, and we see the syllable hum, the very subtle mind and body of Guru Buddha. So we imagine that we see that, and when we see it, we develop an enormous attraction towards Guru Buddha, that state. And we generate that desire, that passion of wanting to go. And at a certain point, like a bow and arrow that's being pulled and pulled and pulled, at a certain point, you let go, and we get out of our central channel, and we go upwards, and we melt with the syllable hum at the heart of Guru Buddha. We become inseparable with Guru Buddha. The main difference in the previous practice, where one is in a daily life and Guru Buddha sits at our heart, in this moment, preparing ourselves for death, we get out of our own body and we melt into the heart of Guru Buddha, who is above. One reason for this is said that because at the time of death, when the very subtle body and mind leave the body, it's said that it's better for to leave from the upper parts of the body. So this visualization is also to induce that, but the objective is, by visualizing Guru Buddha above me, visualizing that his central channel is connected to mine from the inside, I see him and I go towards him. that getting out of one's own body represents death itself. I'm leaving my body, and the very subtle mind that is within the um, the indestructible drop, that opens. I direct myself with an enormous desire, and I have a direction to go. It's important not to be in a hurry to go, but we need to pull the arrow well. The pulling the arrow is that passion, that desire of wanting to go towards him, wanting to experience that state. We see the person that we love so much who's there waiting with open arms, waiting for us to and so there's this strong, strong desire that we're just not able to hold back anymore. We want to get there at all costs, and at a certain point we leave. And there are certain mantras, there are certain sounds that we do to have this strength to get up. Sometimes some practices use the sound pe, as if one jumps up. So from the heart to the throat, and the throat to the crown, and the crown to him, or one just imagines this a constant upwards movement. And once one is there, at that point, one becomes inseparable and experiences that deep sense of peace, etc. And from that state, after one imagines that it takes a bardo a body, and then a rebirth. So we need to focus on doing the our dying well, and then everything else will follow accordingly. It's said that during the lifetime, when someone is alive, it's said that it's not the best thing to do. It's better during our lifetime is to cultivate the Guru Yoga, where Buddha comes to our heart. The process is the same. The feeling, that connection is the same. The difference is in one, he comes to or she comes to us. The other, we go towards him or her. In essence, these two methods are extremely valid. If we're able to do the practice well during our life, and we'll see that at the time of death it becomes quite easy, because we're more used to visualizing and directing our minds. An exercise that we can do right away is to sit down in meditation. First we breathe, we bring ourselves to the present moment, and we visualize our central channel and our two side channels, and one's own attention goes within. We train to see from inside. So we're inside the central channel that looks up, that looks down, each chakra that looks up, looks down, goes up, goes down, and then it goes towards the heart. There's that feeling of space that goes out. We're not used to that perspective. Normally we look from outside in, because we're used to having an identity that's based on our external appearance. And instead, this meditation should be done mostly from inside. But as we said before, if we're able at least to have a certain frequency, create a simple formula, the mantras Guru, or the mantra that we recited before, Lama Kunchuso Lakapsuchi, or Bibabu, whatever it is, but something that helps us connect, to become inseparable from Guru Buddha, to feel that love, that joy, that peace, etc. If we're able to repeat that during the day. It's something absolutely marvelous. Another, it's another way to prepare for death. Another way to prepare oneself for death is during before sleep. So those who nap, you've double your possibilities, two times a day. Otherwise, at least once a day we sleep. So what happens is this: the two possible ways. One, where as I'm falling asleep, I imagine the dissolution of the elements. I imagine the death process all the way to the clear light. Another possibility is I imagine, first of all, I feel that my senses around are dissolving, are shutting down, and I lose contact with the outside world as the elements dissolve. After that, we imagine that Guru Buddha comes, sits at our heart, and our heart becomes inseparable from Guru Buddha. So we enter into the absolute Guru yoga state, and we fall asleep like that. This is something that one can do. It's a wonderful time to do it, also because when we fall asleep with a certain type of thought, we familiarize ourselves with that thought during our sleep all night long. So if I fall asleep angry, I familiarize myself with anger all night long. That's why it said it's extremely important to train in falling asleep with a virtuous mind, because that will determine a great part of the development of our life. It would determine our lifetime. It's if we consider that we sleep for at least a third of our life. Something that really makes me happy is that these techniques are really easy. I mean, we can complicate a lot if we want to. Often we like complicated things. They seem more special when they're complicated, etc. But the essence is really simple, and we need to connect and adapt the practices to our level. This is really important. And Lama Michel Rinpoche showed us this many, many times. So first of all, we connect, we create a healthy connection, and we connect with that. There's also a book called Death, Death, Dreams, and Rebirth, or something like that, written by Geshe Jampa Sengye. He was one of the first masters from Tibet to come to Italy. Geshe Jampa Sengye. I always like thinking of that moment because he was in Tibet. He was one of the first, one of the last to train as and to receive the Geshe title. And in 1960, he left Tibet and he was in India, and he was one of the most learned of the young geshes. And there was a connection with the University of Naples with Professor Tucci, and the Dalai Lama sent to Italy two people, Geshe Jampa Sengye and Nanke Norbu. I imagine Geshe Jampa Sengye, 1960, from ancient Tibet, he gets to Italy. Imagine that. A cultural shock. It's non-indifferent cultural shock. Anyway, we could spend hours talking about it. Francesco met him. Anyway, he wrote this book. It was a very beautiful book, very practical, simple, and he was a very special master. And in this book, at a certain point, he asks the question, many people can have this doubt on how can my guru help me at the time of death? Because it says even during my lifetime, he's so busy and doesn't have time to help me. If I'm there dying, how can I be sure that he's there to help me? Or he says, well, what happens if my guru dies before me? How can I be sure that he's there to help me at my death? Because it's said at the time of death, the guru, with the hook of compassion, if he has the he has the hook of compassion and we have the ring of faith, he will be able to guide us. So what happens if he's busy or he's not there physically? What can I do? And Geshe Chapa Senga gives two explanations. He says that connection, mind to mind, they exist on a different levels and we don't need to worry. But if we want to look at it from a more logical point, if at the time of death one just remembers one's guru and that generates a feeling of gratitude, of love and joy, that's already enough to be guided. So these two aspects. So when I think about you, you perceive what I'm perceiving, because we have this deep connection, which it's difficult to explain technically, within our paradigm, our mechanical, technical paradigm. But the other one works too, because when I connect, what do I need at my time of death? I need a feeling of peace. But when I think of you, I feel that. Just a short time ago, I was with someone who was in a situation that was apparently terminal, but then what I said was, someone who has a lot of Christian faith, I said, leave your body in, let your body to the doctors, and leave your soul with Jesus. Connect with Jesus. And this is essentially that. You're dying. What happens to your body? Who cares? What's important? Where your heart, mind is, where you're going. And that's why it's really important to train in not being distracted by what's happening outside, and to be able to go inside and develop a mind of gratitude, love, and peace. Connecting with our guru. In Tibetan, we use the term menga. Menga. I don't know how to translate it. Let me give you an example, and maybe you can understand it a little bit better. A great cook, for example, a chef. If you take a chef who makes a delicious dish, but you take the same recipe and it doesn't come out right. To do that dish, you need to be next to the chef for a long time until he shares with you some small secrets that are not written in the recipe, but that make all the difference. That's amena. There are these instructions that go from heart to heart that sometimes you're not able to even put them into words. There's part of these instructions that make all the difference, but are not written a formal way or transmitted like formally. So there are the more common formal instructions, and then there's that which is transmitted heart to heart, these secrets that make all the difference. The fact that what we've just seen, this practice of absolute guru yoga, is the same thing turned around for the Poa practice as a preparation for our death, a pre and then during. These are one of these instructions. You won't find this written. I don't think you'll find this correlation between absolute guru yoga and Poa. I'm saying this to say, take care of this information. Use this, experience them. It's a valid tool that we can all use. And once again, let's get back to the beginning of everything, where it said that the beginning of the path, what gives a foundation to the path, is entrusting ourselves, relying correctly on a spiritual guide. So that love and trust and respect that we have at the beginning, we need it at the beginning and we need it at the end. It's said that the ideal attitude to die is that one should have when dying is, it's like when you haven't gone somewhere for a long time. It's some place you really miss. The child that goes home, this desire to get back to one's roots. The child wants to run to the arms of the mother, or this is the attitude that one should have, ideally, when dying. And these 2 days, little by little, what I wanted to do is to change the paradigm. So death, from being something horrible, it becomes something beautiful. Not in the sense, oh, thank goodness I'm death, or I'm dead, or I'm going to die. When someone leaves his body, that's part of the nature of things. And I take advantage, just to add one more aspect. I often hear the question when someone dies is, how old was he, or how old was she? I mean, what does that matter? As if, well, if the person's old, well, okay, a person was old, it was time to die. And what's important is not the age, but how that person lived his life. A person who lived to be 100 plus and lived badly, it's terrible. If someone for his entire life cultivated violence, hate, and anger, and just rehashed traumas, I'm sorry, but the death is not the problem. The problem is how one lives. Someone who dies young but lived those years well, okay, what a beautiful life. Also, because time, it should not be measured in quantitatively, but in quality instead. Like a vacation. What's worth more? 2 weeks of a vacation lived badly, or one intense day lived with joy and love and depth? What is worth more? Just one day lived well. If one is on vacation and fights and isn't well, it's better one day lived really well. And life is the same thing. So I repeat, the problem is not death. The problem is living badly. And there is a solution to that. And death has this gift. Death gives us a gift, which is seeing, reprioritizing. When we get close to death and we make friends with death, what's one of the greatest gifts that death gives us? Life. Because it's only in front of death that I see the preciousness of this life. It's only in front of the certainty of death and the uncertainty of the moment of death that I can say today is a special day that I can't waste. We're together here. When will we be together again? I don't know. So let's live the best way possible, give the best that we can, manifest our love and our gratitude. We apologize where we need to apologize. Let's live our hearts lightly. Let's allow ourselves to be happy. It's not true that it's too beautiful to be true. Let's let go. Let's let go of our stress and our attachment. So let's go of the suffering and sadness, and something that becomes clearer and clearer. It seems strange maybe if I say it like this, but suffering, stress, sadness, dissatisfaction, there's an important part of all of this that we're actually really addicted to these things, like a drug, like a bad habit. Someone who is someone who's used to complaining for nothing. I mean, try to change his habits. Once I remember there was this person who was living a very good moment. Everything was joyous, etc. And I saw the person that this person was uncomfortable, didn't know what to do until he found something to complain about, and then started to relax. It was in abstinence. An example. Take someone, and this can even be ourselves, who is used to being stressed, running around, and at a certain point, take that person and say, you have 1 week, you don't need to do anything, relax. I take away all your stressors, you're here. If you don't find things to do, you stress because you're not doing anything. Because we're made up of habits. And we're used to, we have this chemical, physical addiction, dependency on stress, on complaining, on suffering. Because let's say it as it is, the life of most of us, I say most of us because I don't know everybody's details. Do we have everything we need to be happy? Are we missing anything? Do we have conditions to be happy? What's lacking is satisfaction, peace. But we live in a marvelous context where we have wonderful conditions on many, many levels. So it's a moment where death gives us this opportunity to say, stop being stupid. Where we see that we don't have time to be jealous. I don't have time to be jealous. I'm going to die soon. I don't have time to follow envy. I'm going to die soon. And I'm not saying in a way, in an abstract way. It's true. Soon I will actually die because, I mean, time is relative. I mean, if I spend my life between jealousy and envy and la 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 na na na, soon I'm going to die, and then I'll be just about to die. Instead of become inseparable with the guru, I'm inseparable with stress and complaints and what I familiarized myself with. So really, we need to take our own life in our own hands and our own death as well. And this means, as I said before, it seems strange to say we should make friends with our own death. We need to tame it somehow. We tame life itself, create this contact to say, okay, I'm ready. I am at peace with myself. I'm at peace with others. But this is something that should be given the highest of priorities. So, Guru Yoga practice, the so-called POA practice, look a little bit the process of death, so to also diminish our fear, and at the same time, by familiarizing ourselves with our own mortality, we familiarize ourselves with the mortality of others as well. Even other beings around us, are they immortal or not? And let's remember that the problem is not dying. The problem is living badly, ourselves and others. The problem isn't that our father, at a certain point, our mother, the people close to us, the problem isn't that they are going to die. The crucial point is how we interact with them as long as they're here. This is essential. And here, just add something that I talked about yesterday, but very briefly. It's possible that someone has passed away, and today we have some regrets. For example, one of my masters, I remember that it was the abbot Kachin Losang Supa Rinpoche, the abbot of the monastery in India. He was amazing, so special, was one of the masters of Lama Ganchen. And I like to give you a little bit of familiarity about it. There was a time when Lama Ganchen Rinpoche was living in the south of India at the end of the 1970s, and another friend of his, Kecho Rinpoche, they were quite young, and Kecho Rinpoche had built a small wooden house. I mean, calling it a house is to say a lot. It was a kind of hut. It's very small. I mean, it was 3 people maybe could sit there in the middle of the rice fields, and they would invite this great master, the 3 of them. So Lama Ganchen and Kecho Rinpoche received many teachings and empowerments. This Rinpoche had a tremendous amount of realizations and knowledge. When there were great meetings in India, His Holiness the Dalai Lama would unite all the great learned masters and abbots. Many would come with their entourage and their attendants, etc. And then Ken Rinpoche, he would have his own bag. He would take a very simple rickshaw. with torn clothes, robes. But when he would walk by, everyone would bow. I remember the scene that impressed me. At the end of teachings, um, at the end of teachings, everyone was hurried to get out. I stayed because my master hadn't left yet, and then he was there together with Lati Rinpoche, was a great master of Chujun Rinpoche, and these two older masters, and so there was a kind of stage where they had been seated, and they were saying, no, you go, I after you, after you, after you. To me it seemed like 15 minutes went on, but they had this profound respect for each other. It was really beautiful to watch. And when Lama Ganchen went to find Kachin Lobsang Sopa Rinpoche in his last days of life, when he got to Tashilumpa in India, there are about 200 monks there. He would they all the monks would be outside, and all the monks would be there playing music and with katas and brocade, and they would be there waiting for Lama Ganchen. But instead of bringing the car all the way to in front of Kerimpuche, he would get out first, because in the middle of this muddy road, he would make he would do prostrations to him, and he would run towards him saying, no, 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 don't do this. But every time Lama Ganchen wanted to make prostrations to him, I I the basis of dialect of debate at 12, 13 years old, he was the master from whom I received these first teachings of philosophy. I and he would be seated on his bed with all of the table in front with many implements and stuff. And once someone told me that he didn't have a shadow, and there was this window behind him. At a certain point, I started looking. There was the light coming from behind. I was sitting on the floor in front, and there was a shadow of all these objects in front of him, but the shadow of his own body was much fainter, as if it were the shadow of glass. This is one of the descriptions of what signs of someone who has practically reached enlightenment, who has a rainbow body. And once I asked him, I was a child, is it true that you is it true that you don't have a shadow? He didn't say yes or no. When he died in 1995, I spent maybe a year and a half with him, but he was one of the most important people. I have a deep connection with him. Imagine that he was one of the most important. He was one of the most important masters there, and and he would give me lessons that I understood very little. He would say something, and then I would repeat it. These are the first words in Tibetan that I learned, which means the lack of inherent existence. Kanse, Kansegida, the the intrinsic existence of self cannot be perceived by a correct mind. This is the definition of the lack of intrinsic existence of of self. And they're divided into two. Is a classification of phenomenon, and and instead of waiting for me to memorize all the texts, I just repeated what he said, and he taught me the basis of philosophy and the debate. It was an important fundamental reference. In 1995, something uh, very difficult came out that related to the Panchen Lama, and he was put in a situation that was
Incucalato sarebbe, come si dice questo in
he he was stuck in a situation, and and so no matter what he did in that situation, it went against his principles. And imagine a great master won't have difficulties. Oh, not at all. So he was in a situation where if he did something, it was against his fundamental principles. If he did the alternatives, it also went against his principles. He was forced. He took a train towards Delhi, and before getting to where he had to 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 do one or the other thing, he left his body. So that was also another huge sign of his ability up to it was a shock to me when he died, but what helped me, the shock was the thinking, oh, I had projected so much on the future with him, many teachings that I wanted to receive from him, transmissions, empowerments. He was an extremely important reference point for me. And what happened, I reflected on the fact, I remember that moment when I heard there was this sadness that was also conceptual. I mean, how can I not be sad in front when faced with the death of someone so close to me? But every time I thought of him, I had a feeling of joy because my experiences with him were marvelous. He gave me so much. Every moment that I spent with him, they were very important moments. So little by little, I let those feelings to come out. And I generated gratitude. I said, how wonderful. Even it was a short time. It was extremely beneficial. It was deep and joyous. And that feeling of gratitude and joy, that's what, I mean, it was just a year and a half. But on the other side, I mean, it was a tremendous amount of time because it marked my entire life. It's that gratitude, that feeling of joy, just giving value to those moments helped me overcome all the sadness that, without much problem, all the sadness that I felt. So time in life should not be seen in terms of quantity, but in quality. Very often we ask, how often did you stay there? How much time can we spend together? It's a stupid question. The main question, we're together. How are we together? I go to listen to a teaching. I'm in the presence of someone. What kind of exchange do we have? Because the more I'm able to live situations with sincerity, intensity, in a deep way, being present, the more those things will stay. But But if my head is somewhere else, the time just goes by. Even if I spend my entire life with someone, not much stays. So when someone around us, when someone dies, if someone around us dies, it's not something bad, it's something natural. It's not a real problem. It's there's the real problem. If we don't give the best of what we have, that's a problem. Often we're waiting for some moment, who knows when, at some point we'll be able to live. In our daily life, for example, where we interact with other people, we don't need to wait for vacation to have a good time together. Instead, the real moments when we have this true through exchange, when we look each other in the eyes, these are the so this awareness of death helps us live our life more intensely, less superficially, and without living life as this illusion of this fantasy future. So even when someone close to us dies, something that helps us to face that is thanking for the beautiful things. And something else that I wanted to say as well. Thank you.
Ok? L'importanza per mettere, vi ricordate come abbiamo detto, per essere in pace con il passato?
Past, we have to somehow accept ourself of the past. You know, we did the exercise to see ourselves of the past, see the conditions, and accept ourselves of the past. This happens also when someone dies, and we say, "Oh, if I only knew, I would have done this, I would have done that." We also have to accept that that self of us of the past. Obviously, if we knew, we would have done differently. But I can learn from my past experiences and learn to live the present and the future with in a less superficial way, in a more deep way. For me, one of the most beautiful experiences I had, even if it was a difficult moment, when I was with Lama Michel Rinpoche before he left his body in hospital with him. There were many moments when he, with all his words, he will not stay in that body for a long time. He said this in a relaxed way, but in with all and the sensation to be there, to be grateful to him, and the sensation that there is still nothing that I wanted to say that I didn't say, to do that I didn't do. And this is beautiful, a beautiful thing. But this was possible because all the past years has been lived in an intense way, profound way, without leaving things not to be said or done. And this is important, something to cultivate with the people we love more, with life in general. And it would be beautiful to say, if I have to die today, I will die in peace. And someone could say, I'm away from this, but we just need to walk in that direction. I don't know if you ever had this experience that we live in this era where we walk not so much. And during the pandemic period, I had luck of living close to the mountains, and I started walking, and distances that look like to be really far are quite closer than we would expect them to be. 10 kilometers, we say, oh, it's not so much. One step after another, we get there. And you check it on Google Map, and it was 10 kilometers up and down, but with a bit of effort, we got there. And it was a beautiful experience after our day with the knees that were painful, and there was these small rocks. Chiaioni is on the border with Italy, with Switzerland. There is these rocks that looks like they're thrown there, but with 1 meter between one and the other. And I had also to take the dogs in my hands because they had the difficulties to jump. But aside from this, the thing is that when people start to walk, we notice that the distances are less farther than we expect. And it's the same thing. Expecting to arrive to the end of the day, being in peace with ourselves. It's look like so far, but we just need to walk in that direction. The small paths, everyone, all of us are able to do this. To thank someone, to accept ourselves with love, doing things that we want to do but we never do because we think we don't have time. That is one of the big illusions of the modern times. The other day I heard a sentence that made me laugh because it's really true. I don't have time to read, I don't have time to do that or these. And it says that whoever saw Game of Thrones, it's not true that they don't have time. It's a series that is more than 600 hours of videos, and so whoever saw that cannot say that he doesn't have time. In other words, it's not true that we don't have time, but what are our priorities that we have? So we don't have time for other things because the time is there, and the consciousness, awareness of death help us to create space.
It's at some point we're going to die, and everything's fine. In the meantime, we're alive. And not things might not be fine. If we keep on living as if we're not going to die. So the solution exists. It's not that hard. There's simple things. Familiarize ourselves with constancy, with what we want to become, this deep state of love, of peace, of gratitude, harmony. This is the most important thing. And here we need to find the right way to do that for ourselves. In in Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism, there are very specific means, as I explained before. We have the technique of Guru Yoga, where the essence, the essential part is becoming inseparable, and we allow ourselves to feel that joy. It's a marvelous, marvelous gift that we can give ourselves. And I gave examples of people close to us who lived a classic life, of classic Milanese life. One did, and the one still does, in the sense that you don't have to familiarize it with these things. So you don't have to be living in the cave somewhere in the Himalayas. So repeat it a couple times a day. Go back again and again until you get to a moment where the meditative state and in the practice of Guru Yoga, it is not done 6 times a day, but only once, and it without end. This is our objective. It's possible to get to reach a state of presence and awareness that is constant, where that feeling of inseparability with Guru Buddha becomes constant. Let's start doing it frequently, and the more, so that it becomes frequent, and then it can become constant. So the essence of all this is we don't just say it, but we need to apply it. We need to remember it. And what helps us apply all this is the starting point, which is we're going to die. We need to prepare ourselves. We can't just take it lightly, or when it will come, it will come. No. An example of this, close to all of us, just a short time ago, here, a friend of ours, Burma, who left her body. Many of you knew her. And Burma, her photo is here, where there's the photo of Lama Ganchen. Under her is Burma, a photo of Burma. She was Mongolian. And one quality that she showed was this strong connection, this practice of constant Guru Yoga. She had so much faith, and she had a strong inner strength and determination. And she showed how it was possible to die well, facing her own illness. She did it in an excellent manner. These last days here, she went to a hospice here nearby because her sickness brought the need for some external assistance. But after her death, those who worked in the hospital came together, and they all brought up their experience of her. They said they've never seen someone die so well, and they were all touched by it. This is an example. It's possible, and it's very close to us, and this comes from how one lives. And we have this possibility. We can invert our paradigm, where death is something negative and should be we shouldn't talk about as a taboo, and we should push it away. No, we need to talk about it, and we need to live well, but death should be met with open arms, that when that time comes, we need to change We need to make this change. Otherwise, really, we will continue to see death everywhere in the movies, in the news, and at the same time live as if it didn't exist. Because even in situations, external situations, like in war, for example, from my point of view, the real problem is not how many people are dying, which is absolutely horrible. What's happening? I'm not saying it's not, but the real problem is how they're dying. This violence that's created. I mean, the ones who are creating the violence, the ones who are succumbing to the violence. I mean, there's an interdependence of violence that is disastrous. But the problem isn't the death. It's how it is coming, and everything around it. So when looking at ourselves and the people around us, and let me just say it one more time, let's try not to make death the problem. Also, because it would be trying to go against something that that we can never. It's a fight that we can never win. Instead, we don't realize that we just don't have the time to continue certain dynamics. That as we prepare ourselves really to die, that means that we learn how to live well. If you do Guru Yoga with certain frequency, it generates some joy throughout the day and helps on so many levels. So let's try to somehow to have this gratitude of awareness for death that allows us to live better. It's time for our dedications, and we stop here for lunch.
Jetsun lame kutse rapten chin namkar trinle chokchur gepa dan losan tempe drume sasumgi drove munsela taktu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lama dan dralme cheki pela longche ching sadan lamge yente rabzo ne dorje change kopa nyur tob Sho nimo dele tsendele, nime kuyan dele kshin, ninsen taktu dele kpe, kuncho sumki chingilo, kuncho sumki ngodrubu tsol, trashishu.
At dawn or at dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to obtain all realizations and sprinkle the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness.
At dawn or dusk, at night or midday, may the three jewels grant us their blessings. May they help us to achieve all realizations and spring all the path of our lives with various signs of auspiciousness. Omahon Dambalame Sangye Rinpoche, Kyobalame Tamche Rinpoche, Drembalame Gendo Rinpoche, Kyamne Kuncho Sumla Chopa, Locho Sambo Pagyo Treshi Pa, Tuche Tembe Trinle Yar, Pegye Drolo Zambe Zebrache, Pande Lame Shela Chopa. Buon appetito.
Have a good lunch. Those who won't be here until the end or won't come for the next session, then if you like to come now, you can. Those who will be here in the afternoon, please come in the afternoon because you will start here at 3:30, but at 2:30 I have a wedding blessing to do. Thank you.